Thank you for joining us today on another installment of Frost & Sullivan's exciting podcast series highlighting key disruptive technologies, growth opportunities, economic trends, new business models, industry convergence, emerging geographies, and much more.
Our topic of discussion today is data as a new currency. Currently, over 2.7 Quintilian bytes of data is generated every day in our digital universe, with a utilization rate of less than 0.5%. Companies need to start addressing these stagnant pools of data underneath in order to pave a path towards digital transformation. However, there is a lack of strategic direction and standardization in business processes among companies for building a successful data monetization strategies. So this podcast will focus on some of the key implications of data monetization in various industry verticals with some of the growth opportunities. Today we have with us Trotta, who will be sharing his insights on how commoditizing data will create new market opportunities. Vince has experience in a variety of leadership and direct sales positions at Snowflake. Snowflake Computing is a cloud-based data warehousing company founded in 2014, and Snowflake offers a cloud-based data storage and analytical service to its customers. So our first question is, can you please brief us on how you think data will evolve from piles of stagnant pools to creating new market opportunity to global consumers?
Yeah, happy to. So first off, you need a plan and a process, starting with processing and analyzing and curating raw data. And then from there, the focus should really be on combining the data with other data for deeper and more meaningful data offerings. These are typically in the form of a new product or service offering. Suggestion at this stage would then be to optimize for internal use first, and then focus on improving your customer experience. A good way to handle this could be through a private data exchange. And if you're not familiar with what a private data exchange is, that's a walled garden data discovery and collaboration experience. It provides a centralized and managed hub for a company to list internally shared data assets, help inspire data collaboration, and provide data governance and audit access throughout the process. A private data exchange may be used just for internal employees inside of a company, and it could be opened up for business partners, customers, or could eventually try to dominate an entire data ecosystem within an industry. Private data exchange should also have the ability to tunnel link when a company wants to collaborate with companies outside of their four walls.
So what do you think is the state of the industry right now, and what do you think is disrupting the data monetization industry?
Generally speaking, I think it's early. I liken it to where we were 8 or 10 years ago when you spoke with people and you asked them what their understanding was about cloud computing. Back then, cloud computing was the hot topic. My experience was that if I asked 5 people for their definition of what cloud was at the time, I received 6 different answers. And I think today it's no different. When you talk to people about the state of the industry, no one person or company has all the answers. I think collectively we're trying to figure it out. Relative to the big disruptors, I think they fall into one of 3 camps or categories. The first category would be the cloud service providers themselves, Google, Microsoft, and Amazon, and massive SaaS companies like Salesforce, Workday, and Adobe. When you think about how Amazon in particular has changed the behavior patterns for many of their competitors to become data-driven, specifically Walmart, that's forced Amazon's customers and more importantly, their competitors to move faster to the cloud. So I find that behavioral pattern super interesting. I think the second area is inside of the regulated industries, specifically within the financial services market. Hedge funds, quants, et cetera, they're very keen on data exhaust and alternative data assets. Lastly, the broader technology ecosystem that surrounds the cloud service providers and the massive SaaS companies, as I mentioned earlier. Evident by Google's acquisition of Looker and Salesforce's acquisition of Tableau. Both of those acquisitions were focused on where we are from the state of the industry, as well as disrupting the ways in which data has been brought to markets prior to that.
I think the industry sure is evolving. We're having new market shares and new use cases that are evolving in the data ecosystem. What do you think are some of the barriers and some of the challenges companies are facing in the growth in data monetization industry? And what do you think are like the repercussions for someone or like to overcome these barriers or challenges?
Like everything new, in the end, only a few will succeed, right? And as I mentioned earlier, in my opinion, it all starts with a plan. So as you're going through the planning process, one should consider building out an internal team or hire an independent third party to help out with their data monetization journey. As you're going through the planning, regardless of whether or not you're doing it internally or hiring an independent third party, there's some things that you should consider as part of the planning process. The implications pertaining to security, regulatory compliance, right? I think those are foundational components. The brand experience and the risk benefits and trade-offs. What impacts, will your strategy have on your brand? Managing the technical complexities associated with data monetization and the growing ecosystem surrounding that are also important. From a go-to-market perspective, think about how will you sell the data, right? Will you sell it directly? Will you sell it through a partner? Or will you leverage an exchange or some combination thereof? Does it disrupt your current commercial framework? There are a number of large legacy data providers like Nielsen, as an example, who have been delivering and monetizing data the same way for decades. And back to my earlier point regarding the impact your strategy has on your brand, it's significant, right? People understand and appreciate those legacy data providers. From the second part of your question, what are the repercussions? I think it's pretty clear and pretty simple. You either adapt to how the world is evolving or you will eventually fail and potentially be out of business.
Definitely, totally agree with that. You have to be over the top in order to succeed. Talking about success, what do you think is the greatest opportunity you've identified in this topic or in this data ecosystem?
I think it has a lot to do with the question that you had asked me prior to this one, which is you're starting to see many new and emerging companies compete with the legacy data providers. But these new and emerging companies are typically, they're more nimble, they're leveraging technology better, and they're working, with business partners. And when you combine all of these things together, they're able to lower their overall cost of goods sold, which has a number of positive benefits. In addition, they're able to leverage the technologies to increase customer satisfaction and retention, and in many cases, allow them to charge a premium, for their unique goods and services. Again, being faster to market, more nimble, leveraging technology, leveraging business partners, specifically on the distribution side. How that impacts the legacy companies, not only let's see what's happening around them, let's see which ones are ready, willing, and able to not only embrace the change that's happening around them, but act quickly and decisively to change, their business models. So I think from that perspective, it's inconclusive as to how the legacy companies will ultimately, step up and rise to the occasion. But I know they're being forced to do things differently based on, all the new emerging players in the space. 5 years ago, a company like Adobe probably had a handful of competitors. That's probably tripled over the last number of years. There's more new technologies, more new companies coming to market.
We also see that we are moving towards more digital disruptions, more digital transformations in the space. And I think Snowflake is doing some amazing work towards providing some really innovative products and data services. So what are some of the key trends you've identified in the space of data monetization that you think will shape the future market? Would you specify on maybe automotive, in healthcare industry?
Yeah, well, at Snowflake, I'm very fortunate. I work on a team inside of Snowflake referred to here as customer and product strategy. Our go-to-market really incorporates seeing and hearing from in specific verticals and what those verticals are doing relative to helping out and influencing our roadmap. I by no means am an industry expert. I'm more of a generalist. But again, I'm very fortunate to work with some folks that have subject matter expertise On my team is a gentleman by the name of Todd Crossland, and Todd is our healthcare domain expert. He comes from the field, working prior to Snowflake at an organization called PDX. What he shared with me is a little bit of the history as well as where we're going from a healthcare perspective. So historically, medical and pharma client data was kind of the de facto standard for monetizing assets within inside of healthcare. The PHI was removed, safe harbored, and the data was aggregated from payers and providers and provided back to the farmers and back to academia. A simple transaction model was really what they were doing, and it's a little bit dated relative to an approach. What we're seeing now today with the explosion of data via new data sources, IoT, social, genomic, et cetera, and the evolving change in the reimbursement models from fee for service to outcome or performance-based, the demand for aggregated, longitudinal, anonymized data sets has exceeded the capabilities of what a traditional data warehouse can bring to the table. So to generate the holistic view from a customer data set, right? That's a large requirement. Snowflake in particular has capabilities of consuming both the structured data that's coming from these new modern data sources, claims, EHR, genomic information, things that are generated in a lab, et cetera. And, we're able to curate that content and put it in a format and on a platform that allows pharma and research organizations to monetize it. Automotive is also a little bit interesting as well. We don't have a automotive subject matter expert here at Snowflake, but we do chat with automotive companies. So I'm somewhat familiar with what's going on in the automotive space. Some of the things that are socialized in the meetings that I attend are, who owns the data coming out of the car, right? Is it the owner of the car? Is it the manufacturer? Is it the parts manufacturer, et cetera? As a result, I think you're seeing a lot of, co-creation take form within inside of the automotive industry. This is resulting in, not only shared revenue, but also shared risk, and shared risk in the following areas. From a product side, right, the monetization and the risk models predominantly focus around improving the existing product design, as well as the quality and the safety of the finished product. From a services perspective, working on the brand experience, focusing on, again, safety, as well as convenience and reliability, and generally speaking, the overall, user experience. Tesla's a great example of leveraging data to increase the overall user experience. And I think ultimately co-creation leads to a growing ecosystem that is seeing, new business outcomes, new value propositions as we evolve data and everything associated with data over time.
Mobility as a service is gaining a lot of traction, and there are a lot of companies that have already started working with it. So I think in that space, there'll be new markets, or maybe I should say new customers that would be created who would be utilizing this data, be it like service aggregators, service providers. I think the whole ecosystem is evolving. So, but I think as a company, as Snowflake, you've identified a biggest opportunity here in this data space, maybe to sustain or to grow in the upcoming data economy.
First and foremost, Snowflake is a value-driven company, and one of our key values is putting our customer first. Many of our clients not only build their products on top of our data warehousing platform, they also use the platform to securely share data in real time. Our core data warehouse, which is how most people know us, we deliver that as a service, and that business has been and will continue to grow at an extremely fast pace. However, I think the real growth expansion opportunities above and beyond our core data warehouse could be delivered both from a public and from a private data exchange. We recently expanded our core offerings into a public data exchange. We announced the public data exchange in San Francisco in early June at Snowflake Summit. We believe that our data exchange offerings, as they evolve over time, will help any organization securely share data in real time, and that secure data sharing is a critical element for any company who's serious about data monetization. So, in summary, we're seeing three opportunities for growth: expanding our core data warehouse business, enabling our clients to combine data sharing with new product offerings that they want to bring to market, as well as providing access to our managed public exchange. On our public exchange, in summary, what that is that allows data providers and data consumers to come together on a centralized platform where data providers can list data sets for marketing, data enrichment types of capabilities, and our customers will pick that up on our platform, and then obviously they can use that for whatever data options they want to. And since a lot of our conversation today is focusing on monetization, so the sale of data assets and discovery of data assets are all on platform. And this is a closed loop approach, right, for directionally sharing securely data, combining that with our clients and their ability to list assets within inside of the data exchange is very unique for Snowflake, or very unique to Snowflake, I should say. And those are the areas where we believe we're going to see exponential growth in the very near future.
This is a really great insight, specifically for companies who are trying to get into the space of data. And because the name of the topic they're focusing on is data monetization, there's this term that is having a lot of buzz, that is data will be the new currency. Data's value is more than oil currently because we have the exponential amount of data available in our digital universe. Do you think you can comment on that, and what effect or how will this evolve in the future markets?
Yeah, I've heard that as well. Data is the new currency. In my humble opinion, data is an asset. It's not a currency. That said, this is a difficult question to ask, right? There are individuals out in the marketplace, specifically in the hedge fund industry, that believe the value of data will decrease, not increase over time. Again, that's their perspective. Ultimately, if the company is ready, willing, and able to create new business models, that are focused on innovation, I'm confident, the laws of supply and demand will trigger. That's my perspective on things relative to the currency component of it. I think it's an asset. I think it's up to the entity to figure out how they're going to maximize the value of that asset.
Definitely. I think I completely agree with what you said. Data definitely is an asset, and you need to know how you would want to monetize that asset. From a consumer's perspective, because as we're evolving, the industry is evolving, we are going to see more power in the hands of consumers on how they would want to use their data and how they would want to monetize their personal data. Can you just talk a little bit more about the evolution of data monetization, but from a consumer's perspective?
Definitely. I mentioned earlier when you had asked me the question about the automotive industry and, what I've observed in the meetings that I've participated in is that it depends on who you ask who owns the data, right? The manufacturer of the automobile, the parts provider, or the individual who's acquired the automobile and the one that's driving it and taking care of it, right? The trend that we're seeing right now is around consumer awareness for data monetization. I think most people are well aware of the fact that their data is being sold with or without their permission. And it's pretty unsettling, to say the least. I think it was in 2012, 2013 timeframe, there were a few companies that popped up. Data Group comes to mind. They brought a data exchange platform out directly to the consumers so they can sell, their own anonymized personal data. I think in theory it was a good idea. They might have been a little bit early to the market. I think now people are really focused on understanding what their data will be used for, what the intentions are. My job, I'm very fortunate in my job. I get to meet with a lot of organizations, both large and small, as well as established and early stage. There's few new companies like Cantor, as an example. They're providing consumers with more control on who has your data, which data they have, and what they're doing with it. Then the focus is on the payments to the consumer and paying them back for their digital footprint, right? But the emphasis that they're putting on it is more around the control. It's a different business model, but I do think that allowing the consumer to have more transparency and more control over their data footprint, in my opinion, is super helpful and probably warranted right now. Super targeted ads are the result of machine learning algorithms. And, again, I think people have some heartache with that. They don't know who has what insight, what can be derived about the data. So that, again, back to the control mechanism, I think that's, super important. When the consumers understand how their data is being used, I believe the natural byproduct of that will be more around, data for good as opposed to a one-dimensional focus on data for monetization.
When you spoke about transparency and how consumers or customers are more aware of and have more control over how their data is being used, definitely the industry is focusing on with GDPR. We are more aware, and definitely there's a demand for more transparency in this area. And I think data monetization is not one directional. Making value out of data definitely should be from both ends, unidirectional, from the consumers and from the companies who are providing targeted ads. If it is mutually beneficial, I think the value of data will be enhanced. And I think these were some really great insights. Do you think you would have any final words for subscribers to help them actually start conversations in their companies about transformation of their business models, or having a more data-driven strategy across their organizations?
Yes, I do. Snowflake has done a lot of the heavy lifting associated with the ideas and concepts that we've discussed, in our time here together. We've taken great length and steps and measures to provide infrastructure to companies in this area so that they can focus on their data. Our data warehouse is delivered, as a service. So if you're a data consumer, access to data, queryable data, available data sets for richer, deeper analytics and insight to make better, more informed business decisions, that's a value for data consumers. From a provider perspective, again, and this is kind of more along the lines of the data exchange that I mentioned earlier. If you're a provider, we're providing you with infrastructure and the mechanism to publish data sets or make available your data for analytical services and eventually monetization. It's a great turnkey managed service, whether you're looking at, core data warehousing or monetizing your data assets inside of a public exchange. Again, and we take care of all the infrastructure components as part of our service. If you want more information on who we are and what we do, you can contact my colleague, Jessica Aloya, and it's jessica.aloya, ALOIA @snowflake.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I think with that note, I would really thank Vince for joining us today and sharing his insights on so many different verticals in data monetization industry. Definitely this information would definitely be very helpful to our viewers.
We hope you have enjoyed this session. Please join us for future podcasts. And to know more about our growth partnership services, reach out to digital@frost.com. Thank you for your time.